The Tennessee Titans have been abysmal and irrelevant the past few years, but we have the blueprint to get them out of the gutter and back into title contention.
We want a big physical team in the trenches that is fast and violent on the football field.
How's it going today? My name is Jesse McNamer and welcome to Point of View. Before we get into it today, I just want to say we always appreciate your feedback. Look forward to reading your comments like the one we've got here. Also, be sure to stay tuned to the end of this episode to see if you can guess today's trivia question down below. To today's topic, is there any light at the end of the tunnel for the Titans? You might need to squint, but that light is there even if it's just a sliver. And I know that can be hard to believe considering they have posted double-digit losses the past 3 seasons and lost one of the best offensive players in the league in Derrick Henry. But change is coming, and I still think Brian Callahan can be the guy that turns it all around. In order to do that, he and the front office are going to need to add a lot of talent to this roster, and that starts with the #1 overall pick. Now, there's a couple ways they can go about using the pick. Typically, when you hold the top pick and are in need of a quarterback like the Titans desperately do to replace Will Levis, you take the best QB on the board, and that would be Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward. Truthfully, I think both will be pretty good QBs in the league. There's also a lot of doubt that either would be worth that type of draft capital in any other year. And if that's what the Titans believe, then I wouldn't blame them one bit for trading down in the draft because let's face it, they need a whole lot more than a franchise QB to contend, and next year's class of quarterbacks look a lot better with Arch Manning leading that group. And I'm not talking about trading so far down that they miss out on one of the elite talents in this class. There are a handful of teams who need a QB, so there should be a few offers to choose from. Ideally, they could swap places with the New York Giants, who have the #3 pick, and bring back at least one future first. That would be a huge boost to the future roster, while also giving them the opportunity to draft a game changer in this year's draft, like Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter. But whatever they do with the pick, I'll trust that new general manager Mike Borgonzi made the right call because he was a key piece in identifying and drafting Patrick Mahomes to the Chiefs. Here's what Borgonzi said about how he'll approach the QB position in Tennessee.
We're keeping an open mind on this, but the quarterback is the most important position, arguably, in sports. So you have to solidify the quarterback position. So we're going to turn over every rock, whether that's free agency draft or, we have quarterbacks on the roster here. We're going to give him every opportunity to play and to compete. But we're going to attack this thing. We're going to be relentless attacking this until we find the answer.
That's exactly what I'd want to hear if I was a Titans fan. He's not going to just assume that Ward or Sanders will be the answer to the position, and there's more that can be done with the first overall pick. Well, what they do with that is probably the most important move they'll make all offseason. It's just step 1 towards contention. Step 2 is finding their QB if they don't draft one, but more on that later. After that's figured out, it's time to hit free agency. Borgonzi mentioned in his introductory presser that he wants to primarily build through the draft, but he also understands the need to add talent in free agency to fill the gaps. And he realizes that the current roster doesn't have many players who deserve to continue to fill the gaps. Here's what he said about how he evaluates the roster he's been given.
There's some talent on this roster, but we're a 3-win football team right now. So that's not good enough. And we're going to have to look, everywhere to improve it. Whether that's upgrading starters or upgrading depth. And I'll get to sit down more here with the coaches and get a better understanding of all the players. But there's some talent on this roster. We're going to have to upgrade some positions, though.
It's honestly refreshing to hear a GM not try to sugarcoat things. There's a lot of gaps to be filled, and one gap they should look at first is the receiver position. That's an area where they could take a big swing for someone like T. Higgins or Chris Godwin to complement Calvin Ridley. After that, they gotta figure out the rushing defense as they ranked in the bottom 7 in the NFL in yards and touchdowns allowed on the ground. I know Harold Landry has been around for a while, but the Titans could save $11 million on the cap if he is released. And that could be enough to add some depth to the defensive line and improve the rushing defense. And the last thing that's 1,000% necessary to address right away is their O-line. In 2024, they ranked 27th in pass block win rate and 21st in run block win rate. If it stays that way, it doesn't matter who's under center, it's not going to go well for them. There's plenty of ways to boost that unit like draft picks in the later rounds or via free agency for someone like Cam Robinson. And even if they do all of that, it's just a start because I don't see a way they compete for anything meaningful in 2025. But it would go a long way towards changing the culture, and that often leads to more winning and playoff success, which could start as soon as 2026. So what do you say, Titans fans? Do you think this is enough to get your team back on track? I don't think there's any perfect way to go about this, but change needs to happen, and a lot of it. So I think this is a good route to take the next few months. And I mentioned earlier that I had an idea of who should be their quarterback if they don't draft one, and it's finally time to reveal that I think Sam Darnold would be a home run offseason addition. For more on that, check out this past episode of Point of View. And the moment you've been waiting for, here's the answer to today's trivia question. We appreciate you tuning in. We will see you in the next one.